I heard my husband's voice drift up from the kitchen below, low and urgent, mixed with my brother's nervous laugh. My hand froze on the banister. Something in that tone, the way they stopped talking the second my foot creaked on the stairs, made my stomach drop. I didn't go down. Instead, I stood there in the dark hallway of our suburban home, listening to the muffled conversation resume, catching fragments that didn't make sense. Not yet, but they would. God, they would. Let me back up 3 years. My name is Ashley Mitchell, and I used to believe I had everything figured out. I was 34 years old, married to a man I genuinely loved, living in a 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, the kind of house with a 2-car garage and white shutters that got repainted every spring. I had a stable job as a marketing director at a tech firm downtown, making decent money, around $95,000 a year. My brother Derek was my closest friend. He lived 20 minutes away with his wife, and we did the whole family thing, Sunday dinners, holidays, even vacations together. My husband Michael was a contractor, not some fly-by-night guy with a truck and a business card printed at Staples. He had his own established company, Mitchell & Sons Construction, which he'd built over 12 years. We owned the house outright, had solid retirement accounts, and honestly, we were comfortable. Not rich, but that comfortable where you don't check your bank balance before buying groceries. Michael was handsome in that weathered, hard-working way. Tall, with dark hair starting to gray at the temples. He had this laugh that came from deep in his chest, and when he smiled at me in the morning while making coffee, I still felt a flutter. We'd been married for 9 years. The romance had mellowed into something steadier, more real, less fireworks, more foundation. I liked it. I felt safe. Derek worked as an accountant for a mid-sized firm. He wasn't flashy, but he was sharp with numbers. He and his wife Jennifer had 2 kids, Emma, 7, and Tyler, 5. Derek was the kind of brother who texted you stupid memes and showed up when you needed him. When Michael and I had a rough patch 5 years ago, nothing serious, just the usual marriage friction, Derek didn't pick sides. He just listened and reminded me why I'd fallen for Michael in the first place. Our life had rhythm. Michael would leave at 6:30 in the morning for job sites. I'd go to work by 8. We'd eat dinner together most nights, talk about our days, watch Netflix before bed. Weekends were for errands, the gym, and family time. We weren't planning kids anymore. We decided years ago that we were happy as a pair, but we were Uncle Michael and Aunt Ashley to Derek's kids, and that was enough. My mom, Linda, lived about 40 minutes away in a smaller suburb. She was the type of mother who called too much but meant well, always asking if I was eating enough vegetables and reminding me that I wasn't getting any younger if I changed my mind about kids. My dad had passed 10 years ago, so the family had become tighter, more insular. We protected each other. The house on Maple Street was our sanctuary. We'd renovated the kitchen 2 years ago. New counters, new appliances, soft gray cabinets. Michael had done most of the work himself, which meant it took longer, but looked perfect. There was a small deck out back where we'd sit on summer evenings with wine. Not talking much, just being together. That's when I felt most married, most at peace. But looking back now, I see the signs I missed. Small things. Michael staying late at job sites more often. Him being protective of his phone in a way he hadn't been before. Derek calling more frequently, asking how things were going between you and Michael. I'd laugh it off. Derek was just being a protective big brother. Then came the Friday night in November when everything started to come apart. Michael had said he was heading to a job site inspection in New Albany, about 30 minutes north. He'd be back by 8. I'd ordered Thai food, set out beers, planned to watch a movie we'd been meaning to see. At 7:30, Derek called. He said he was in the neighborhood picking up supplies and asked if he could swing by. It was casual, no big deal. He did it sometimes. He arrived at 7:45, let himself in with the spare key we'd given him years ago. I was in the kitchen plating pad thai when I heard his truck pull into the driveway. He came in through the garage, and I remember noticing he looked anxious. His jaw was tight. He kept checking his phone. "Everything okay?" I asked, handing him a beer. Yeah, fine," he said too quickly. "Just a lot going on at work." We small-talked for 15 minutes. Derek asked about my job. I asked about the kids, the usual script. Then, at 8 o'clock, the front door opened. Michael. He came straight into the kitchen, and when he saw Derek, something flickered across his face. Surprise? Guilt? I couldn't quite read it. "Hey, man," Michael said, his voice shifting into something different. "Didn't expect to see you tonight." "Yeah, I was just in the area," Derek said, and they exchanged a look. A look that lasted too long, a look that meant something I wasn't part of. "Let's step outside for a minute," Michael said to Derek, his hand already on the sliding door to the deck. "I need to talk to you about something." They went outside. I stood at the counter, suddenly very aware of the sound of my own breathing. Through the glass door, I could see them pacing, heads bent close. Derek was shaking his head. Michael was gesturing, emphatic. I couldn't hear the words, but the body language was unmistakable. This wasn't casual. This was serious. I told myself to turn away, to give them privacy. But I didn't. I moved closer to the door, straining to catch anything. That's when I heard my name. "Can't keep lying to Ashley," Derek was saying, his voice carrying through the glass. "This is insane. She's my sister, Michael. How long are you planning to—" Michael cut him off, his hand gripping Derek's shoulder. They were too far away now, voices dropping, but the damage was done. Lying to me. Insane. My husband and my brother. Planning something. I stepped back from the door, my heart hammering in my chest. My hands shook as I set down the beer bottle I'd been holding. I didn't know what I'd heard, not exactly, but I knew it was bad. I knew that whatever was happening, they'd been keeping it from me, and they'd been doing it together. When they came back inside 5 minutes later, both of them looked strained. Michael went straight to the fridge, grabbed a beer without asking if I wanted one. Derek wouldn't meet my eyes. "You guys okay?" I asked, keeping my voice level, the way you do when you're already lying to yourself. "Fine," Michael said. "Just some business stuff. Nothing interesting." Derek nodded, but his jaw was still tight, and something in his expression looked almost guilty. He made an excuse about needing to get home. Jennifer was expecting him, and left within 10 minutes. He hugged me goodbye, and I felt the tension in his shoulders, the way he held on a beat too long, like he was sorry about something he couldn't say. After he left, Michael and I ate our dinner in almost complete silence. He turned on the TV, but neither of us really watched. I kept replaying those fragments of conversation in my head. Lying to Ashley. Can't keep lying. How long are you planning to— I didn't ask him about it. That was my mistake, maybe. If I'd asked directly, if I'd demanded answers, maybe everything would have been different. But I was afraid. Afraid of what the answer might be. Afraid that asking meant I'd have to deal with whatever was coming. So instead, I sat there on the couch next to my husband of 9 years, watching the movie I couldn't focus on, and felt the ground beneath our life begin to crack. The next morning, I woke up at 5:30, before Michael's alarm. I lay there in the dark, listening to him breathe, my mind still spinning through fragments of last night's conversation. I needed answers, but I also needed proof. I couldn't confront him based on whispers and guesses. That's when I decided to do something I'd never done before, something that made my stomach twist even as I was thinking it. I waited until Michael left for his job site. Then I went to his office downstairs, the small room off the garage where he kept his business files and laptop. My hands shook as I opened the desk drawer. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Bank statements? Emails? Anything that would explain what Derek had meant about lying to me. The laptop was password protected. Of course it was. But I tried the obvious ones. Our anniversary, my birthday, his mother's maiden name. Nothing. Then, almost without thinking, I tried Derek's secret as a joke, a desperate stab in the dark. The screen flickered and opened. My breath caught. He'd literally named his password after the secret he was keeping. I opened his email. The most recent folder was labeled Private. Inside were threads between Michael and Derek dating back 8 months. 8 months. I started reading, and with each message, something inside me cracked a little more. Derek, I can't believe we're actually doing this. If Ashley finds out— Michael, she won't. We'll be done before the deal closes. By then, it won't matter. Derek. It matters now. She's my sister, Michael. I feel like I'm lying to her every time I see her. Michael. You are lying to her. That's the point. We agreed on this. I scrolled further, my vision blurring. There were bank transfers, lots of them, from Michael's company account to a new LLC that I'd never heard of. Over the course of 8 months, I counted nearly $420,000 moved out of our family business. $420,000. The worst part came in an email dated 3 weeks ago. Derek. The property's listed now. Once it sells, we split the profit. I talked to my realtor, and she thinks we'll get $850,000 minimum. That's over $400,000 in equity for each of us after fees. Are you sure about this? Michael. I'm sure. Ashley doesn't need to know. She's never asked to see the detailed accounts anyway. By the time she does, it's done. I had to sit down. The room started spinning. They'd bought property together. Commercial property, it seemed. Without telling me, without including me in a decision that involved hundreds of thousands of dollars that, by law, were partially mine. This wasn't just a secret. It was fraud. It was theft. It was my brother and my husband conspiring to hide assets from me. I printed everything. My hands shook so badly I could barely operate the printer. I made copies of the emails, the bank statements, the property documents I found in his files. Then I sat on the floor of his office and cried. Actually cried. The kind of crying where you can't breathe, where your whole body shakes. That afternoon, I called a divorce attorney. Her name was Karen Walsh, and she worked in a high-rise downtown. I got her number from a friend at work who'd gone through a messy split. I didn't make an appointment through the office. I didn't want a record. I just called her direct line and explained enough to get her attention. I need to come in today, I told her, and I need to know what happens to business assets in a divorce when they've been hidden from one spouse. How much are we talking about? Karen asked, her voice suddenly sharp. At least $400,000, maybe more. Come in at 4 o'clock, she said, and bring whatever documentation you have. Karen's office was on the 32nd floor, all glass and chrome and expensive leather. She was a woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and the kind of demeanor that made you believe she'd eaten lesser attorneys for breakfast. I sat across from her desk and laid out the emails, the bank statements, the property deed. She read everything without speaking, her jaw getting tighter with each page. "This is bad," she finally said. "This is really bad. For him, I mean, not for you. These are hidden marital assets. In Ohio, that's going to cost him severely in a divorce settlement. The court doesn't look kindly on spouses who conceal assets, especially when they're involving third parties." She looked up at me. "Is your brother going to cooperate with you?" "I don't know yet," I said. "I haven't talked to him." "Don't," Karen said immediately. "Not until we have a strategy. These emails are gold, but they're also evidence of a conspiracy. We need to be careful about how we use them. The fact that your brother is involved makes this more complicated, but it also makes Michael's position weaker. A business partner can testify. Family members can testify." I felt something shift inside me. Not relief exactly, but a sense of direction. I had been victimized, yes, but I wasn't helpless. I had options. I had power. "I want to confront him," I said, "but I want to do it right. I want him to know that I know everything." Karen nodded. "We can do that, but we do it strategically. You're going to need to document everything from here on out, every conversation, every email response. We're going to build a case so solid that his only option is to settle quickly and generously." I drove home in a daze. The afternoon light looked wrong somehow, too bright, too sharp. I kept thinking about 9 years. 9 years of believing in someone, trusting someone, building a life with someone, and all the while he was planning this. All the while my own brother was helping him do it. Michael came home at 6 o'clock, same as always. He kissed me on the cheek, asked what was for dinner. I made pasta, and we sat across from each other at the table. He talked about a job site issue, some supplier delivering materials late. I made the right responses, asked the right questions. I was acting, and I was good at it. At 7:30, I excused myself and called Derek. He answered on the third ring. "Hey, Ash," he said, and the sound of his voice made my chest hurt. "We need to talk," I said. "Can you come over? Jennifer won't mind?" There was a pause. "What's this about?" "Just come," I said. He arrived 40 minutes later. Michael was in the living room watching the news. I asked Derek to come into the kitchen, and I closed the door. He looked nervous, his hands in his pockets, refusing to meet my eyes. "Tell me about the property," I said quietly. His face went white. "Ashley, Tell me," I repeated, "everything." He sat down heavily at the kitchen table. For a moment, he just stared at his hands. Then he started talking. The whole story poured out. 8 months ago, Michael had approached him with an idea. There was a commercial property in New Albany, a former office building with good bones and tremendous potential. Michael had found the deal. Derek had the connections to get financing quickly. Together, they could flip it, renovate it, and sell it for a significant profit. "But why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice steady even though I was falling apart inside. "Why didn't you tell your sister?" "Because Michael said—" Derek stopped, his jaw clenching. "He said you'd try to stop it. He said you were too conservative with money, that you'd worry about the risk and try to talk him out of it. He said it was better if you didn't know until it was done, and we had the profit." "So he asked you to keep it secret," I said. "He asked you to lie to me." "Yes," Derek whispered, "and I hated myself for it every single day. That's why I've been acting weird. That's why I kept trying to get him to tell you. I told him last night that I couldn't do it anymore, that we had to come clean." "How much money, Derek? How much of our family's money did you two steal?" "It's not stealing, Ash. It's Michael's business. He can invest his company's money however he wants. It's his company." "It's not just his company," I said, my voice rising now. "We're married. That means it's our company. That means any assets in it are half mine. You know that. You're an accountant. You know the law." Derek's eyes filled with tears. "I know. God, I know. That's why I told him we had to tell you. I told him it was the only right thing to do." "And what did he say?" "He said we'd wait until the property sold, and then we'd come clean. He said by then the profit would be so clear that you'd see it was a good decision and forgive him." I laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. He was going to manipulate me with money, make me think I was part of the win so I'd forgive him for the betrayal. "Ashley, I'm sorry. I am so, so sorry. I should have told you from the start. I should have refused to go along with it." "Yes," I said, "you should have." He left an hour later, after Michael came in and realized what had happened. The fight that followed was explosive. Michael denied nothing because he couldn't. I had the emails, the bank statements, everything. Instead, he tried to justify it. It was his business to run. The investment was sound. Nobody would be hurt. He was trying to secure our future. "By lying to me?" I screamed. "By involving my brother in a conspiracy against me? That's how you secure our future?" "It's not a conspiracy. It's a business decision. It's fraud, Michael. It's marital fraud, and you involved Derek to help you do it." He went quiet then, and I saw the moment he realized the full scope of what he'd done. Not just betrayed me, but made me complicit in lying to myself, made my own brother complicit in lying to me, poisoned the relationship between us. "I want you out," I said coldly. "Tomorrow. Pack a bag and go stay somewhere else. Don't come back until you've talked to a lawyer." "Ashley, come on. Get out, Michael." He left, and I stood in the kitchen of the house I'd thought was mine, surrounded by the remnants of a life that had been built on lies, and I picked up my phone and called Karen again. "I'm ready," I told her. "Do whatever you need to do. I'm filing for divorce." The next 3 months were a legal and financial nightmare. Michael's lawyer tried to argue that the property investment was a separate business venture and therefore not subject to community property division. But Karen was relentless. She subpoenaed the bank records, the loan documents, the emails. She deposed Derek, who, to his credit, told the truth. He confirmed every detail of the conspiracy. He admitted to his role in helping Michael hide assets. Michael's position crumbled. His lawyer eventually approached Karen with a settlement offer. Michael would divide the property profits equally with me, over $200,000. He would buy out my half of the house. he would cover my legal fees. In exchange, I agreed not to press criminal charges and to keep the details of the fraud out of the divorce proceedings. It wasn't justice exactly, but it was as close as the law could get me. The hardest part was Derek. My relationship with him fractured in a way I wasn't sure could be repaired. He'd made a terrible choice, but he'd also been pressured by someone he trusted, someone who was supposed to be his brother-in-law. We didn't talk for 2 months after the settlement was finalized. Then, one day, he showed up at my door with flowers and coffee. "I've been seeing a therapist," he said without preamble, "about boundaries, about why I let Michael manipulate me, about why I didn't have the courage to tell you immediately." "And?" I asked. "And I'm sorry. I'm deeply, genuinely sorry. I betrayed you, and I've spent every day since regretting it. If you don't want me in your life anymore, I understand. But I wanted you to know that I'm taking responsibility for what I did, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure I never let someone do that to me again." I let him hug me, and I cried again. But this time, it felt like the beginning of something, not the end. The divorce was finalized in August. I kept the house. Michael bought out my remaining equity in the business to cover my half. I used the settlement money to pay off the mortgage, to invest in my retirement, to breathe. I was no longer married, but I was free. And that felt like a fair trade. 6 months later, I was having dinner with Derek and Jennifer and their kids. Emma and Tyler were arguing about dessert, and Derek was telling a stupid joke that made Jennifer groan. I looked around the table at my family, my real family, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. Not the false peace of a life built on lies, but the real thing. The kind that comes from knowing the truth, facing it, and choosing to move forward anyway. I'd learned something important through all of this. The people closest to you can hurt you the deepest, but they can also be the ones worth fighting for. Michael had shown me his true character, and I'd been smart enough to listen. Derek had made a mistake, but he'd had the courage to own it. As for Michael, I heard through mutual friends that the property deal had fallen through. The market had shifted. He'd lost money on the investment. There was a certain poetic justice in that, though I took no pleasure in it. He tried to build something on deception, and deception had cost him. That was its own kind of lesson. I learned to trust my instincts again. That night, when I'd stood in the dark hallway and heard those fragments of conversation, my body had known the truth before my mind was willing to accept it. I'd ignored that knowing because I was afraid. I wouldn't make that mistake again. The house on Maple Street no longer felt like a sanctuary, not after everything that had happened within its walls. So I put it on the market the following spring. I bought a smaller place, a condo in a newer development, with clean lines and no history. It was mine alone, and that was enough. Derek and I rebuilt our relationship slowly. He started bringing the kids over more often. Emma helped me plant a garden on my small patio. Tyler made me a card at school that said, "Aunt Ashley is the best," in his careful first-grade handwriting. Jennifer and I started going to lunch together once a month. The wound was still there, but it was scarring over. It would always be part of our family story, but it didn't define us anymore. And me? I was stronger, I was smarter, I was angrier, in a way that never quite went away, but that anger became fuel. It kept me from making the same mistakes twice. It made me cautious about who I let close. It made me careful about trust. The last time I saw Michael was at a grocery store, nearly 2 years after the divorce. He looked smaller somehow, less confident. He saw me and started to approach, but I just nodded coolly and turned down a different aisle. There was nothing left to say. He'd made his choice, and I'd made mine. Standing there in that fluorescent-lit supermarket, I realized something. I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't even really feel anything for him at all. He'd become a stranger who happened to share a chapter of my life. And that, somehow, was the greatest victory of all. Not revenge, not anger, not even justice. Just the simple, powerful freedom of not caring.